Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Ethos Online. Again, this is a space where we can be, belong, and become the very best version of ourselves. So, wherever you're joining us, whether you're in Michigan, Minnesota, Florida, Connecticut, Colorado, Arizona, we have so many different people coming in viewing these. We just want to say welcome. Thank you for joining us in this journey, especially through this book we call Genesis, right? And larger, the Torah. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. We want to say thank you for delving really deep into a really beautiful and often misunderstood book. And so before we delve in, I just want to remind you again, share these videos. Other places we're doing pretty well with views, but we'd like to continue growing this YouTube channel specifically. So if you would continue sharing these videos and also continue donating. Patreon, not Patreon, but ethos-church.org/donate. There you can continue giving and walking with us in this journey. So today, again, we move into Genesis. And we want to remind you every week, again, if someone's joining us for the first time, we want to remind you, Genesis was not written as a history book. That was never the intention. Genesis was never the intention of like, hey, we're going to put together a solid history, perfectly put dates, specific dates and time periods, specific names. That was never the intention. It wasn't to create a detailed, literal history. And so what was it, you might ask? It was simple. They were in the middle of Babylonian captivity, 587 BC. And so they're asking the question like other nations at that moment are, in the middle of Babylonian captivity, they're in the city, they're saying, is our tribe going to survive, right? Are we going to make it? And so the answer to this was we think we can. And the way that we can hold on to this truth, the way that we can hold on to our identity, our values, our understanding of the divine, all of it is through writing the oral traditions. Right? Not the history, the traditions, the stories, the messages from really poetic voices, the warnings, right? Oftentimes they're put into these really beautiful stories. And so this is what Torah was. And so on every page and in every verse, there's something interesting about Israel, who Israel is called to be and who they're called not to be, right? And so Torah, again, is a written response to the fears of assimilation, right? We will not assimilate. We will not become another Babylon. That was the idea. And so every time Torah is brought out, it's celebrated. It's a gift. And again, think about how many church services we've gone to, right? Pastor opens the Bible. This is kind of the thing, right? The thing we do, the typical order of things in the service. But when they would open up Torah, there's a moment of awe, a moment of silence. They literally took a breath because they knew this thing is filled with life. It's helped our people hold on to who we are, who we aren't, where we should be heading. And so there was reverence, there was beauty, there was awe, right? That's what it was. And so again, a combination of poetry, mythology, prophetic musings, warnings, big, deep stories, it's all there. And so again, every time you read it, ask yourself, where is Israel in the story? Because Israel as a nation, it's always miniaturized through one of the tellings, one of the warnings. It's always there. And so we are continuing to move through chapter 20 today, and we're going to actually delve into all of it. We're going to move through it because really it's a story you're going to recognize. Yeah, we've covered this, but there's something even deeper going on. So we just finished with Lot and his wife, right? Lot leaves Sodom and Gomorrah, but doesn't fully leave. We have that moment in the cave. We have his wife turn to Saul, all of that. So the question is, what's Abraham doing? Right? What's going on with Abraham? Again, Abraham, the father, right? The founder of Israel. What's he doing while Lot is going through all of this? And so in chapter 20, we'll find out what Abraham's doing. So here we go. I'll read you. And again, remember, this story is really the Exodus story, right? This is the story of exiting Egypt, leaving quickly before the wrath of God takes place. All of this, we're going to see this theme over and over again, right? Mistakes that we keep having over and over again. They're going to continue showing these. These are things, Israel, we're warning you, don't repeat the same mistakes. Yeah. So here we go. Chapter 20. And Abraham traveled from there to the land of the south, and he dwelt between Kadesh and between Shur, and he sojourned in Gerar. And Abraham said about Sarah his wife, "She is my sister." And Abimelech, the king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah, right? And God came to Abimelech in a dream of the night, and he said to him, "Behold, you are going to die because of the woman whom you have taken, for she is a married woman." We've heard this, right? We've heard this story before. She's a married woman. And Abimelech had not come near to her, and he said, "O Lord, will you kill even a righteous nation?" Right? Did he not say to me, "She is my sister"? And even she said, "He is my brother. With the innocence of my heart and the purity of my hands have I done this." It continues. And God said to him in the dream, "I too know that you did not do this with the innocence of your heart, and I too have withheld you from sinning to me. Therefore, I did not let you touch her. And now return to the man's wife, because he is a prophet, and he will pray for you, and you will live. But if you do not return know that you will surely die, and all of your descendants," basically, right? And Abimelech arose early in the morning, and he summoned all of his servants, and he spoke to all those words in the ears of those people, and the men were very frightened. And Abimelech summoned Abraham and said to him, "What have you done to us?" Right? What have I sinned against you that you have brought upon me and upon my kingdom? A great sin, right? Deeds that are not done, you have done to me. And Abimelech said to Abraham, what did you see that you did this thing? And Abraham said, "For I said, surely there is no fear of God in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife. And also, indeed, she's my sister, the daughter of my father, but not the daughter of my mother, and she became my wife." So again, he's just kind of going through the story, right? "And it came to pass when God caused me to wander from my father's house that I said to her, 'This is your kindness, which you shall do with me, whether we cross, say about me, he is my brother.' And Abimelech took flocks and cattle and manservants and maidservants, and he gave them to Abraham, and he restored to him his wife Sarah," right? Abraham's making out like he's making out really well with all this, isn't he? Second, third time this has happened, right? There's a shift here, right? There's a repetition. Abimelech took the flocks and cattle and manservants. We just read that. Abimelech said, "Here is my land before you. Wherever it pleases you, you may dwell." So again, take whatever land you want, Abraham. Right? Abraham's getting a good deal out of this. Yeah. And so Sarah said, "Behold, I have given 1,000 pieces of silver to your brother. Behold, it is to you a covering of the eyes for all who are with you, and all you have contended." And Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech and his wife and his handmaids, and they gave birth. For the Lord has shut every womb of Abimelech's household because of Sarah, Abraham's wife. Wow. Right? So we've heard the story. Right? Abraham seems to forget. Right? Why does he keep forgetting? This is again where if you take it too literally, right, it gets a little weird. This guy is he's just making the same mistake, actually very specific mistake repeatedly. But again, here's the beauty of the Jewish tradition. The majority of Jewish rabbis, the way they interpret this piece is so much deeper. It's not on a literal sense, like what is up with this guy? Why does he keep doing it? It's something far deeper. And so let me share with you some of the deeper ideas that we can pull from this chapter, because most people kind of skip it. They say, I already heard that story, right? Abraham lies, makes it sound like that's his wife's a sister, and then they feel bad, and they give him a bunch of things, and then God blesses them instead of spites them. Got it. We've heard it, right? But there's something deep. Here we go. "And Abraham traveled from there to the land of the south." Now, again, this is for Israel. This is their story, right? So think about this. Abraham, what he does here, he distances himself from Lot. Right? Where's Abraham? He distances himself. And again, this is so important, especially if you're an Israelite and you are in the middle of assimilation, fears of assimilation. Abraham learns that in the middle of facing extinction, assimilation for his tribe, all these things, he has to choose not to align himself with the people, the places, the ideologies that are going to hurt him and his people. They have to step away from that. And so we create distance. right? This idea of creating distance is so crucial to the Hebrew story. And I would argue for us as well, right? There's a very real world application here. Learning to distance yourself from the things, people, ideologies that are bringing pain, brokenness, oppression, bondage, sin, whatever word you want to put in there, it's bringing the opposite of shalom, right? So I thought about this idea. What things right now, what in my life do I need to distance myself from? I thought about different people in my past, different ideologies, different things. And I thought there are definitely some trends, right? With different ideologies, different people that often just bring you down, right? Constantly trying to find ways to take you back to captivity. And so I thought about this. Number one warning I would give to anyone is if you're considering distance yourself from a person, maybe even a toxic relationship, number one, oftentimes what you'll find is people who bring you back into captivity, brokenness, they deeply disrespect boundaries, right? They're always bringing things up. They're always doing something. They're always finding ways to bring you down, right? Oh, you said you're trying to do better with your diet. Well, I brought over this, right? They're constantly doing different things because they're not respecting your choices, your decisions, your perspectives, your commitments, right? And so sometimes we have to distance ourselves from people, ideologies that sometimes become toxic. And I get a lot of emails and conversations about those relationships because oftentimes we have to learn to distance. Number two, they're manipulative and controlling. Notice this. Abraham is pretty manipulative, isn't he? But also, we have to understand that these different nations, there was so much manipulation going on how to control a populace. And so they're distancing themselves from a Babylonian captivity, a system, right, that is bent on oppressing the other. And that's the system they were fighting. And so for us today, when I want to distance myself, I'm looking and I'm seeing more and more of these relationships that were toxic in my past. It was because people wanted to control, manipulate certain outcomes, different things, often me, right? And we have to, when we see that, we have to learn to step away. Another thing to consider, number three, they lie, right? They'll tell you one thing and they'll do the opposite. Oh, we're not this, and then we realize they are this, right? The ideology tells you one thing, and then you find out no, it actually brings something very different, right? Those kind of things. Look for the lies, right? Look for the lies. If you see them, distance yourself from it. Number four, they always have to be right. We all know people like this, don't we? Always have to be right at any cost, right? At any cost. Oftentimes, bringing pain, brokenness into relationship, ideology, movements, anything that says, I'm always right, I can't learn from anything, that is deeply, deeply wrong, right? There's brokenness there. Distance yourself from it. Almost there. Number five, they're always the victim, right? They always use victim narratives and others. I see this a lot. And I've lived this too. I've become the victim. I've used the story. I get it. It's very easy to do. But people who are toxic, movements that are toxic, the victim mentality, when that is my main thrust, my main story, when I create victims from those victim narratives, that is when something's toxic, right? That's when we step away. That's when we distance. Whether it's a movement or a person, whatever it is, we learn to distance. And lastly, avoid judgmental people. I think we all know those people. Super judgmental. Anything we do, right? There's toxicity there as well. Yeah. So I wanted to bring this up because I just found it really an interesting point that I didn't want to forget. Abraham says, this person in my life has become a bit toxic. I am distancing myself from him, right? I'm putting myself in a place where I am not living right directly next to him, right? We can love one another, those kind of things, but there's distance there. Abraham creates distance, much like Israel is being called to create distance. Even though you're living in Babylon, create some space, create some safe space where you are not completely connected to the thing. You're not becoming the thing, right? So good. All right, let's keep going. And he dwelt between Kadesh and between Shur, and he sojourned in Gerar. And so Kadesh and Shur, they are basically it's almost like they're opposed to Lot, right? Lot dwells in the very words there, meaning despair and confusion. And so these two places, quarreling and a wall, so basically like fighting and stability, he's going to find himself in the middle, right? Because that's where the growth is. This is where Abraham chooses to dwell, right? It's not stagnant, but it's also not toxic. He finds himself in a place where there's growth. Very different than Lot, right? Yeah, Lot seems to gravitate toward the extremes. Abraham finds himself in the middle, the liminal space where there's change, shift, movement, there's openness, but there's also growth, right? There's fertility, right? That's the idea behind these two places, and where he finds himself in Gerar. So kind of a cool concept there. So we'll keep moving. So Abraham said about Sarah, his wife, she is my sister, right? Here's where everything falls apart. And Abimelech, the king of Gerar, sent and took Sarah. So again, very similar story. We know this. So basically, he takes Sarah into his bedchamber, and there he's going to lay with her, right? Keeping it PG. He's going to at this moment, she's going to at some point conceive, right? That's what she would be doing months later, because she's part of his harem. That's what Abraham basically let his wife go off to. So again, really gross, right? But again, this experience, it's a repeated narrative. We've heard the story before, but again, there's something deeper with the story. And so let me share with you the rabbinical interpretation of this. And again, every moment, the other stories where he does this exact same thing, right? Here it is. When a stranger comes to town, the proper thing to do would be to inquire if he needs food and drink, not whether his female companion is a married woman. And hence, as Abimelech did the latter. Do you see it, right? It tipped off Abraham to the fact that there is no fear of God in this place. And so he lied about his relationship with Sarah in order to avoid being killed. Consequently, it could be argued that the parallel behavior results from the lack of fear of Yahweh by the antagonist in the other two similar situations. So bigger story here, right? Abraham goes to this country, and the right thing to do as a king is to bring them in. Right? If they're in your country, you bring them in, you offer food, you find ways to help them on their way, right? This is what the Hebraic way of living in the Middle East was. You gave someone bread when they came into your town. And so the king, Abraham goes there and he knows if the king does this, he's a God-fearing man. If the king asks about my wife, then he is not. Right? This is a kingdom that's built on violence, oppression. That's that kind of kingdom if he asks about my wife. And so he knows immediately this is not a good man. It's not a good kingdom. Yeah. So he unfortunately lies, right? Because he's afraid, he doesn't trust that his God's going to take care of him. Other side of the story, right? It's kind of a twofold story, right? There's good, bad, and ugly. Now it continues, Abimelech, the king of Gerar. So understand this. If you are a Jewish person and you hear about Abimelech, understand this. Abimelech is the son of Molech. Yeah, Molech. Molech is the violent Canaanite deity that Israel is deeply against, right? The child sacrificing, violent deity. And so get this. Abimelech is basically the son, the demigod, considered demigod of Molech. And so again, when you hear this as an Israelite, when you are reading this as a Jewish person, you immediately know, oh yeah, Abimelech, that dude is bad, right? That dude is really bad. No wonder that's the first thing he says to Abraham when he comes into the story, because the Canaanites are our enemies, right? And this is what the Canaanites do. And so all of this we kind of miss in our 21st century interpretations of it. But for a Jewish person, they make the connections. They've heard the stories. They know what the names mean. Abimelech is the son of Molech. Yeah, good. And Abimelech had not come near to her. And he said, "O Lord, will you kill even a righteous man? Did he not say to me, since she is my sister, and she said to me, he is my brother? With the innocence of my heart and with the purity of my hands have I done this." Right? So what? Okay, so Abimelech, knowing who Abimelech is, any Hebrew person reading this is saying, wait, what? Abimelech is innocent? Wait a second. Innocent? Look at this concept here. Again, some people's interpretations will even read righteous, right? But again, the idea in the Hebrew was not I'm righteous. There's no sin, right? I've done all these good things. Now I have this label righteousness. The idea was I'm innocent. I haven't done the wrong deed, right? And so Abimelech is saying, look, I have not done the wrong thing, the thing that deserves punishment. And so in that regard, Jewish interpretation says, yes, he was innocent. He was not what Christianity would say today, righteous, right? Not a righteous man. He was innocent of the thing he was being accused of. Yeah, interesting, right? And God said to him in a dream, I too know that you did do this with the innocence of your heart, and too withheld from you the sinning to me. Therefore, I did not let you touch her. So again, interesting idea to consider. God stopped him from touching her, right? Some people, when you begin taking all this literally, does he do this today, right? Like, why doesn't God do this more often? You know, there's so many people. We probably all know someone who has been hurt, molested, raped. Why doesn't God intervene then, right? We go down the road of ultra literalism, and we get into some really sticky places. But if we understand the story is actually a deeper picture, a deeper metaphor of Israel and its fear of assimilation, Israel learning how to traverse through difficult moments, right? Where their values are being questioned, where they're attempting to figure out what we do in the liminal space, right? How we continue building on our ethics, our morality, our ideas of God. Then it begins to make a little more sense. And so the deeper idea here is God has Israel in mind, right? He has a plan. He's going to lead this nation through it, right? This God has not given up on you even in the middle of captivity. That is the deeper picture here. Don't get lost on the literalism. It's so easy to do, but it will detract from the deeper meaning of the story. So it continues again. It moves through. Abimelech summoned Abraham to him, said, "What have you done to us?" Again, he's saying, "Look, why would you do this to us? You know, I want to turn around. I'm doing the right thing. You know, let's do this." And so it's really a beautiful moment. It reminds me of like Jonah, the Ninevites. There's the turnaround, right? I want to shift, right? And this is the idea of repentance in a nutshell with Hebrews. Right? Repentance is not saying, oh, I'm evil, I'm a bad person, take a couple wafers, drink a couple of grape juice, and you're good. That was never the idea, right? That was never the idea. Repentance is saying this thing brought me death, brokenness. I'm turning to shift and go the other direction. And so Abimelech says, look, as a nation, we're probably doing the wrong thing. As a nation, we're valuing the wrong things. We are going to shift, turn around, because here's the beauty, right? There's always time to change your mind. There's always time to shift and go the other direction. And so for Israel, what a beautiful moment. Even though you continue to fall, assimilate, do certain things that are bringing brokenness, you can always turn around. You can always shift. If our enemies are offered that kind of grace, then so are you, right? Beautiful, beautiful picture, beautiful story. And so you can change your mind, right? You're not locked into this present path you're on. And so I think many of us, we get stuck and we think we are stuck for good, right? Truth is we're not. We can shift. We can turn any moment in our story. We can shift and turn, and our journey can shift and change too, right? Toward the positive, the good. Yeah, it's a beautiful application. It's one Israel chose to take, and it's one I think when we take, it becomes a much better, more applicable story. Let's finish. What did you see that did this thing? And Abraham said, for I said, surely there is no fear of God in this place, and they will kill me because of my wife. And so again, this goes back, again, original conversation, right? The good guests, the good guest or the good host is going to offer the guest something, right? Food, drink, take care of their needs. The bad host is going to ask about, hey, is she taken? Right? What can I get from you? Not what can I give you? So going back to that. And when I read this again, I thought about that this week. I thought about Micah 6:8. Right? And really Micah 6:8 was a reference back to this original concept. Right? And really it's the picture of Jesus, because Jesus is the picture of the good host. right? Over and over again, you get these stories about the host. Jesus, Israel, you are called to be the good host. It makes sense, right? Israel, this is why you see the parables. Israel is called to be the good host in the world, right? To bring others into the feast where the goodness, prosperity, love, connection, forgiveness, where this all happens. Israel, you're not called to be the guest anymore. You're called to host the banquet. Yes, right. So good. And so, what does the Lord require of you, right? Israel, Jewish nation, you sitting on your couch in the 21st century, right? Yeah. What does the Lord require of you? Well, here it is. Act justly, love mercy, walk humbly with your God. Right? And so I thought about this. What does acting justly look like? Well, I go back to Jesus, right? Jesus is this fantastic picture of what Israel's called to look like in the world. And so Jesus shows justice over and over again, doesn't he? What it looks like to act justly, whether it's like flipping religious systems upside down, calling into question certain ideologies and religious traditions that weren't bringing life. Right? Calling out the oppressive nature of certain traditions that were literally there to bring people down, right? Sitting down with the sinner, right? The ostracized, the marginalized person of the day, sitting with them, having a meal with them. This is what brings restoration, justice, right? That is what brings connection. So good, right? Act justly. The next one, love mercy. You know, when I think of Jesus, I think of Israel, what they're called to be. Jesus shows mercy. Watch this now. Not to just the people that like him. He shows it to his enemies. He shows mercy. And what a great challenge for all of us, right? None of us are doing it perfect. But what a great challenge, whether it's in person, online, over the phone, whatever it is. Showing mercy toward even our enemies. And this is what Jesus does time and time again. Father, forgive them, right? They know not what they do. And that brings us to walk humbly, right? In the middle of the worst moment, right? The most painful moment for Jesus on the cross, there's humility, there's love, there's connection. Over and over again in the ministry of Jesus, you see this humble willingness to do the thing that's going to help someone even at his own expense. And so again, Israel as a nation, this is what they're being called to do, right? And Jesus is this perfect picture, this example of what it looks like to love mercy, right? Walk humbly, act justly. This is what it looks like. So beautiful. Yeah. Oh, we'll finish off here. Abraham prayed to God, and God healed Abimelech and his wife and his handmaids, and they gave birth. So beautiful, right? Notice how it ends. When we choose to do the good thing, when you choose to be the good host, a positive person in the face of the other, right? We choose to bring life. When we do these things, there is new birth. And this is a tradition, a theme over and over again in the Bible. There is new birth. Come on, right? This is so good. There's new birth. When we choose to do those things, new life happens. And so new life comes when we choose to love well. New life, new birth happens when we choose to love well. When we choose to be the good host. When we choose to bring others in. This is the beauty of the message. Right? All of this from a repeated story. Yeah, the Bible's so good. There's so many beautiful stories here in Genesis. So lastly, how do we take it home? I thought about Micah 8. How do we walk Micah 8? How do we live it? Just a couple points to consider this week. Number one, I thought about this. Take time to hear people's stories. If I want to learn to walk justly, love mercy, these things, then I'm going to begin taking moments, time to hear people tell their stories. I may not even like the stories they're telling. I may not even agree fully with their stories, but hearing other people's stories is going to cause me to have to pull out on my own. I'm going to have to see it from a bigger perspective, which is going to cause me not just sympathy, but some empathy as well. So take time to hear other people's stories. Number two, consider each life as just as important as your own. I think for all of us, we live up here in our own heads all the time. We hear our own monologue, our own interior monologue all the time, but we forget other people have that same thing going on, don't we? They value their life just as much as you value yours. And so remembering we're all beautifully human, we can learn to appreciate that in other people as well. We can learn to value them when we remind ourselves we're of value. Which again, if your theology is telling you you are worthless, broken, evil, bad, then this would be a really difficult thing for you, wouldn't it? But if you understand you are beautifully human, right? There is goodness and beauty and so much potential in you. When you understand that, it's easy to see it in other people too. Number 3, allow your heart to break with others. When you hear the stories, allow yourself to break, right? You know you're moving in the right direction when you find yourself a little emotional when you hear a story, when you hear someone share an experience. You know you're moving in the right direction. Your heart just breaks for people because you are learning to live empathetically. And then lastly, remember we're all one step away from standing in each other's shoes. Right? A friend of mine says, we're always one step away from being homeless, right? We're always one step away from living the same life as other people. And so remembering that can also keep me walking, living fully, acting justly, loving mercy, being humble. Those are all elements that are going to keep me in that place where I can remember we're all really in the same race, right? The human race. We're all in this together, to quote High School Musical. Anyways, this was so good. Everyone, thank you for joining me today. This book, Genesis, is filled with so much beauty. And so, as always, as we end, ethos-church.org/donate, please continue or consider donating to this project we do every week. This is such a fun experience to share every week. What we pull from this book is it takes hours and hours to get this stuff together, but I think it's worth it. I think it's worth it. And as the views continue to grow and as we get more momentum, I think more and more people will see it too. As always, consider doing live living room groups with us where we discuss things as a group, and then hit that subscribe button. Subscribe, share. Let's build this YouTube video. Thank you everyone so much for being with us today. I hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next week.